The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. I'm your host, Thomas Salerno, and joining me today on our panel are Jeff Haecker. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Thomas.
And Patrick Mason. Hey there, Pat.
Howdy, Thomas.
And Rob Leonardi. Hello, Rob.
Hello, well met.
Well met. So you decided to return, so we didn't scare you away.
I mean, yay!
Be sure
I figured I'd give it another shot at least.
Yeah, why not?
I hear what's coming next is pretty cool.
Yes, yes. Be sure to follow along with The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. You can also find us on social media. On Facebook, we can be found at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X at @SQPN, and on Instagram, we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget to get your official Secrets of Middle-earth merchandise, including our awesome t-shirt at sqpn.com/merch. It's always a great way for you to support the show and to show your love for J.R.R. Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. But before we begin our next romp through the Silmarillion, Jeff, you have one bit of news for us this week.
Yes. There was announced that the Mythmakers graphic novel which is a graphic novel of the friendship of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, but they're kind of turned into like fantastical characters within that graphic novel, is actually going to be made into an animated movie. I don't think there was an announced date or anything yet, or anything, so it's still it was just announced. And I think the graphic novel is fairly new as well. Mm-hmm. So still very early days of it. But probably in the next couple of years we'll see that. So
I just want to say
Comic-Con.
I call it last podcast Tolkien 2.
Right, yeah. That's right.
Now it's personal.
Electric Boogaloo. Yes. But before we get into our next Ruin of Doriath segment of the Silmarillion, I just wanted to make clear to all the other panelists, I have a lot of notes for tonight, but we will not be going through everything individually that I have here. That's just for me. But what I think is interesting about this chapter is that I kind of noticed that it almost is divided into 4 distinct sections, which I call the Despair of Hurin, Thingol and the Nalglamir, the Sack of Doriath, and finally the Second Kinslaying. So I figure we could go through like each of those kind of 4 sections and open those up and discuss. So I guess first of all, I just want to get your guys' general impressions on this chapter, because I think it's interesting because it almost starts out, at least I thought, as kind of a sequel or coda to the Turin Turambar stuff. What did you think, Rob, of the Ruin of Doriath? And also, question for you, is this your first time reading this chapter, or have you read it have you read the whole Silmarillion through before?
So I've listened to it on not podcast. I've listened to it on audiobook once or twice before. So I redid it again for this podcast, but it's depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, there's more doom. There's more issues, and where is he getting this stuff from? Like it was so sad. And I think it really just kind of shows how deep humanity can fall. And even in our real world, just this is the things that when you are not doing well, that can happen. And I don't know. I was just really sad by it.
Yeah, this chapter is kind of one depressing thing after the next,
Like, they give you a little bit of hope. Oh, hey, you get to Cimmeril. Oh, hey, not anymore.
Right, like, oh, here's this little bit of hope, like crunch, and then it just gets destroyed. What about you, Pat? What are your thoughts generally on the Ruin of Doriath?
So the Ruin of Doriath kind of brings to a head the internal drama that occurs within the drama of the fall of the House of Finwë, right? So the House of Finwë, which, Fëanor is part of, falls out in this epic, massive drama, which is what we've been reading through for the most of the Silmarillion. And then you sort of have this play within a play going on that occurs at the House of Hador, right? And they're sort of set up as the best of men, brought into, sort of their greatness through Finrod, Felagund, the three families who are uplifted into the Edain, brought into the drama via one of the children, via one of the scions of the House of Finwë, and sadly wrapped up with the doom. And so what we see here is, as tragic of a character as Tur was, it turns out his whole family is wrapped in on this, and his father, warped by the malice of Morgoth, brings, whereas Tur brought about the doom of Nagathron, sadly his father ends up bringing about the doom, unwittingly, of both Doriath and Gondolin, right? Because he gives Morgoth the place to look, which is really all Morgoth needs, because there's no magical protection over Gondolin. It's the eagles that are keeping the flying creatures away up to this point. And, Morgoth now has a direction at which to search, whereas before he didn't know. And that's, eventually how he comes upon, oh gosh, what's his name?
Oh, Meglin, you're thinking.
The Dark Elf, yes.
Yeah, Meglin, yeah.
And it's funny because, so many of the Sylvan Elves were referred to as Dark Elves by the Noldor. But Meglin and his dad are the only ones I really consider in my mind real dark elves. Like the rest of the Sylvan Elves seem pretty decent chaps, but
yeah,
those two, something's not right. So and then unwittingly brings about the doom of Doriath through the introduction of the Naglamir, which then snowballs and everything. And this kind of showcases one of the things I really love about Tolkien, and that is that things have consequences, and sometimes that consequence is 27 steps away. We'll get there, and I'll tell you how we got there, and I love that.
Right.
We see the Naglamir follow its entire path all the way back to what we get, through the end of this chapter, and effectively the doom it spells, not just for Doriath, but for Thingol and for eventually his son Dior and for Beren and Luthien. It just wraps back around to affect them all. And sort of this, really shows how wrapped up in the drama of doom that the House of Hador is.
Yeah, it's almost like this chapter could have been called Of the Naglamir, because it is like a thread through all four of the kind of sub-stories that are going on here. And like you say, it affects everybody. What about you, Jeff? Do you have any kind of general thoughts on our story so far?
Yeah. Overall, the chapter was interesting. It really is kind of setting up the end game of the Silmarillion of the main content of the Quinta, because we're about to get into, we have, I think, two more chapters, or really one more chapter, and then it's the War of Wrath. So we're really kind of setting up the end game, and it really sets up at the end with Elwing. If you've read ahead before, when you see Elwing, I did the Leo point when I saw her name, because I'd been a while since I've read this, so I forgot who I forgot that she shows up here. But of course, because she goes on to be Arundel's wife, so pretty important there. So it's really setting up the end game of this and kind of clearing the board in some ways, because now we're down. Now Doriath is gone after this. Pretty soon Gondolin's going to be gone, and then not long after that, Balerion itself is going to be gone. So it's really it's really been the beginning of the end for a while now. Like the whole really probably the last several chapters have been kind of leading to the end, but yeah, no, and it does kind of give, I forget exactly what happens to Maedhros in the end, but it does kind of give him a little bit of redemption here of trying to find Dior's sons who were left abandoned to starve. It's pretty dark stuff.
He blows that, don't worry.
I assume so. I just forgot exactly what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, but it is very depressing, and this whole book has been, it's not the happiest book to read. It's not The Hobbit or even Lord of the Rings.
No,
a lot of it. So, but
Maedhros and Maglor.
Interesting.
No, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Oh, I just say it is an interesting chapter overall and is really kind of setting us up for the end.
I was like, Maedhros and Maglor remind me of those Star Wars games where you have like a light side and a dark side meter.
Oh yeah,
depending on depending on what decisions you make, and it's like it's like Maedhros like, oh look, I made a light side decision, but then that gets canceled out by 2 more dark side decisions. So, yeah. So we kind of start off with what I called the despair of Hurin. I'm like, or the one guy in Middle Earth who seemingly can't catch a break. This guy has been through so much. He's been chained to Thangorodrim and forced to watch his family be destroyed. And now he's been set free. But of course, Morgoth has pumped him with all this propaganda and subtle lies to poison his mind against particularly Thingol and Melian. What I thought was really interesting, and I guess this didn't sink in last time I read this, but it says that Morgoth does this, of course, because he hates Thingol and Melian, but also because he's afraid of them. And I suppose it's because, Melian's a Maiar, but it's like, why Thingol in particular? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Why, in particular, Thingol and Melian would... Is it just because they've lasted so long, or is there something else going on here?
So Thingol is the only, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong on this one, willing to be wrong, but I believe he is the only elf who's been to Valinor and then came back and didn't kill anybody to do it. or go kind of doom or anything like that. Doom. Sorry. So he's one of the I think he's the only one who's actually been to Valinor and came back, and there was nothing, there's no kinslaying on his shoulders. There's no doom of Mandos on his shoulders. He's just back with the light of the trees. And now he's got one of the Silmarils, right? So he's literally got the light of the trees. And then he's with Melian, who is a Maiar, whose powers have been able to withstand Morgoth. And I have to figure Morgoth by this point is probably little more powerful than Gothmog. He's probably a little more powerful than Gothmog, but maybe not that much. Because you got to figure, he's spent so much of his energy and his life force out there, he lost Glaurung. He's been wounded by a mortal. So he's probably not in the best of shape. And so this one impenetrable bastion, he can't get into, and he doesn't even have the curse to hold over them. Unlike the rest of the Noldor, who he knows all he has to do is wait and they'll kill each other. With them, he doesn't have to do that. Or, he doesn't have that choice necessarily. Of course. But I think it's sort of like, this is his play, very much like setting up Nagathron and Gondolin was almost play, right? Almost trying to save them, or Morgoth's trying to destroy them. And this is Morgoth's last attack. Oh, this isn't against the Noldor, it's against the Sylvan Elves. So it's just a different battlefront.
I think too, there's probably something that kind of like Sauron's or like Aragorn was a threat to Sauron just by existing. So I think too, it's potentially because there's a bloodline there that has proven to be successful against him, and because of Beren and Luthien, Beren escaped from Angband, and Luthien helped him cut a Silmaril from the crown. So there's descendants of Thingol and Melian out there, and now we have Dior coming in. So I think too that there's a threat, like just very similar like Sauron in the the line of Elendil being a threat to him. I think similarly Morgoth may have that in mind, that this bloodline can fight me and can be can win victories. So of course, I don't think he thinks they can like fully beat him, but they at least can oppose him, maybe more so than some of the other families or bloodlines that have.
Yeah, when you see essentially, Nephilim being created, you're gonna start being kind of scared.
Yeah. That's right, like human angelic hybrids. It's like that's not good news for Morgoth, I guess. But Hurin essentially goes around taking names, essentially, of all the people he feels like have hurt him. Like he first, as you mentioned earlier, Pat, he inadvertently reveals Gondolin's location by being old man yells at clouds, or in this case, mountains. He stands there yelling at the mountains, and
Yep.
And so Morgoth's got the general idea where the city is now, essentially.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like, he's been looking through the eyes of Morgoth for so long.
Yeah.
Like how painful that must have been, but then how much it has tinted his own eyesight, so that everything he looks at now, he just sees pain and suffering, and just everything needs to end.
Melian says that, yeah, because she says you see crooked through the eyes of Morgoth, because he comes back. First he goes to Nargothrond and dispatches Meme, the petty dwarf. So he comes back for a second, and then he's dead. And then
it's the
Nauglamir brings it to Menegroth in Doriath, and just starts trash talking Thingol in front of everybody. Here's your fee, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Here's a fee for you killing off my kin.
Essentially, yeah.
It's such a slap in the face.
Yeah. And to his credit, Thingol does not do his usual rage mode thing where he stays calm. We see some character development for him.
Was it character development, or was it the fact that he saw the treasure?
Oh, that too. Yep.
I think that's a really good point, the kind of eyesight, because you think about when you look at something, right, and we're primarily visual creatures, that's our primary sense, and so when we look at something, the memories that are associated with that thing play through our minds, even if it's like the first time we've seen something that day or whatever, and beyond that, the routine of those things also plays through our minds. So if Morgoth looks upon all of this stuff with hatred or envy or loathing or greed or lust, like it explains a lot of why he's got that in him, right? Like how he has this sort of jealous lust of Gondolin, right? Because that is the feeling that Morgoth has towards it, and this just anger and hatred towards Doriath, because that's how Morgoth feels it. And I like the fact that Melian's able to break the spell. She's able to take it off of him.
Right, yeah. He sees the truth. Unfortunately, kind of like his son, once the truth is revealed, he despairs completely and slays himself. It says he casts himself into the sea. So it's almost like he's repeating Turin's end to a certain extent, or even his daughter's. He
specifically says, "I am his thrall no longer." Right, like maybe he's realizing if he stays alive, he's going to continue on this path of serving Morgoth in a different way, and so that's his way of trying to get out of it, instead of repenting and going back to the Valar. And
right, it's like his justification for killing himself is almost like it for him. He thinks of it as a form of escape. Yeah, almost. And it's so sad, though. Earlier, backtracking a little bit, the scene with him and Morwen, which I remember more clearly the version of it that's in the Children of Hurin book. But man, that just hits you. But one interesting bit is that spot, so that the graves of the three of them becomes in the Third Age Tol Morwen, the island that we saw in the short film about Gurthang the sword. Yeah. But as you mentioned, Rob, Thingol's enamored of the treasure, specifically the Nauglamir. It's funny, in the Lost Tales, Hurin shows up with actually cartloads of treasure. But in the published Silmarillion, Tolkien narrowed it down to just the Nauglamir, which I think was enough anyway. It's the
Arkenstone of this time.
It basically is, right? It's got us, it's these gems that were strung into a necklace in Valinor, and they used to belong to Finrod, and so now Thingol gets it into his head to set the Silmaril in it and sort of remake it as like the greatest piece of bling in Middle Earth. And but this next section too is really interesting to me, because this is kind of the origin of the sort of blood feud between elves and dwarves that we see play out throughout the Legendarium.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that in aspect of this in particular?
Well, it's just like every good blood feud. It starts with, kind of a mean-spirited comment that then snowballs into another mean-spirited comment, then goes to fisticuffs, to knives, to axes, to one group running back home and saying, they attacked us for no reason. So then, armies coming in play. It's the classic drama of the everything getting amped up to the nth extreme, and that leading to bloody violence and the eventual downfall of Doriath. So it's so fitting that this happens in a place where Morgoth was supposed to not have any power, right? Doriath is protected by the girdle, and yet this is the kind of thing Morgoth excels at, right? Like turning people against each other and tweaking them and seeding the lies so that Feanor thinks his brother is trying to take his throne, and he shows up in full-blown armor with a sword. It's the kind of thing that from an outsider's viewpoint makes no sense. And yet we know the Nauglamir has been dragon cursed, right? Because who knows how Glaurung sat on it or perched it on his head. I don't know what dragons do with the gold.
and Morgoth doesn't even have to do anything. They just fight each other.
Well, yeah, Morgoth doesn't have to because the Silmaril they're all ensnared in the Doom. They've been they've been ensnared since Thingol set Baron on the quest to get the Silmaril. And from then on, I mean, they've been in that Doom. So yeah, in this case, Morgoth doesn't have to really do anything. Like he's taking advantage of it for sure. And Glaurung destroying Nargothrond and infecting the Nauglamir with the dragon sickness, surely helps. But yeah, I mean, in this case, it's like he doesn't have to do anything. He's just he can just let things play out because the Silmaril, the dooms of the Silmaril will lead to them ultimately destroying each other. So
yeah,
well, I do think that is still part of like Morgoth's curse, that is just that type of demonic influence and oppression sneaking through the family, sneaking through different things, and it can just easily work like that.
Yeah, I think it's the Doom mixed together with the curse, mixed together with it's our cookie recipe. We've
just add Doom.
Cookies. Yeah. Just now with more Doom.
More Doom.
Yeah, I mean it's all mixing together to create what will happen and lead to the whole destruction of this whole continent.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that scene in The Wedding Singer when Adam Sandler goes off his rocker and the other wedding singer is standing there is like, he's gone completely insane and I'm reaping all of the benefits. Morgoth standing back, just gonna let this play out. There's nothing better I could do.
Right, yeah. What's interesting too is that in the Lost Tales version of this, there are several key differences that I noticed. One is that the dwarves are even more wicked in the Lost Tales version than they're depicted here. And in fact, they even hire orc mercenaries to fill out their army in the Lost Tales version. So it's orcs and dwarves that sack Doriath. And not, like I said, not even orcs working directly for Morgoth at the moment. The dwarves are paying them to do this with part of the treasure. And then the other interesting difference I noticed was that in this published Silmarillion, Melian flees before the sack. Like after Thingol is murdered is when she leaves and departs back to Valinor to go back to Lorien, not Lorien from the Third Age, but Lorien in Valinor. But in the Lost Tales version, she's actually present during the sack, and the dwarves try to capture Melian, but just the power of her gaze, like they don't even dare touch her. Essentially, they come to capture her, and she just almost like those stories in the gospel where like Jesus will just pass through the midst of his enemies and no one touches him. That something very similar to that happens, where she just walks through them and nobody lays a finger on her and she leaves, which I thought was very dramatic and interesting. And I'm like, why did he cut that part? That would have been neat. But yeah, so it's been interesting for me to read the earlier sort of draft versions of this and to see how, and I think part of it is because of the condensed nature of a lot of the chapters in the published Silmarillion, where they are condensed prose versions of much longer stories in prose and also verse. So yeah, it's just been interesting to note some of the differences, particularly in this part.
Yeah, and I think probably from one perspective they cut that out for either Tolkien or Crystal switched up the timeline, because if Melian's still there and the girdle's intact, then the dwarves never be able to make it in. And so with her gone, it makes that kind of an easy thing to explain.
That's true. Yeah.
that would be my bet or my guess. It is kind of sad we never get to see Melian in combat. She probably has some pretty cool stats.
No, yeah, I wouldn't want to go up against Melian. I don't think so.
She'd be like the bard over there singing a song and making the enemies, like confusing the enemies and making them fight each other or something.
And as a shield mage, she's OP because she could put it over like an entire country-sized region. Like, yeah. But another thing that struck me in this chapter was that the dwarves, not all the dwarves take part in this. So the dwarves of Belagost do not, they bow out. They're like, and it's only Nogrod who takes part in the actual sack. And I feel like that has ripples down into the Third Age, because it's like not all the dwarves are immediately on bad terms with the elves and vice versa. It kind of seems like elves who are either tangentially connected to Doriath in some way, because like, okay, like in Lothlorien, they're really kind of, when we first see them in the Lord of the Rings, they're kind of, really anti-dwarf. But I think that's because Celeborn lives there, and Celeborn was a relative of Thingol. So
yeah,
he kind of remembers. Although Thingol didn't do himself any favors. What did he, like you say, Pat, he insults them. He says they're of uncouth race and says they're stunted. And I'm like, okay.
Stunted people.
Yeah, I'm like,
whose life began by the waters of, I can't even pronounce that word. Years uncounted ere the fathers of the stunted people awoke. Like, yeah, that's.
Tell us what you really think. Well, yeah, it's like.
I came first.
Right. And
sorry.
Like it's it's effectively your average
brother.
Couple, it's 2 3-year-olds fighting over a toy in the sandbox. A 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. Well, I'm older. Push.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like Thingol's sort of lust for the Silmaril, which he's had since Beren and Luthien's story. It comes back around and does him in the end.
Yep.
It's like great.
You gotta figure, like, so if we have objects taking on the resonance of their owners, kind of like we have with the dragon cursed gold or the dragon lust, whatever, you gotta figure the Silmarils are in pretty bad shape at this point, because they were in Feanor's keeping, and Feanor got so jealous of them that he wouldn't even let other people look at them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for a really long time, however many ages, which is however many thousands of years, I remember we did the math. Go listen to like 20 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Some ridiculous amount of math. And then they're in Morgoth's keeping, which is like jealousy and anger and hatred and pain, because they also hurt when he wears them. So like whatever's coming off these things beyond the beauty has got to be bad news for whoever's in and around them.
I don't think so. I think the fact that they had the light of the trees within them, they were kind of like the purifying thing that it in itself would have been good and purifying. And if it I wouldn't say it would make others better, because clearly it didn't. But like, it could have been something that if they were treating it correctly, it could have been something more beautiful than just, oh, hey, this is a pretty jewel.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I don't think the Doom, has affected its inner essence, as you say. Like, like the light of the trees is still pure and holy, but it's something about, I think, the possession of it and the desire to keep it. Like, that holy light doesn't do you any good when you try to, it's mine and nobody else's, like it kind of defeats the whole blessedness, like, purpose. Yeah.
Well, isn't that not what our faith is? If we're keeping our faith to ourselves, what's the point? We're supposed to share it with others, right? Like,
right.
The whole idea of you don't hide your light under a bushel basket. You don't hide it in the back so no one can see it for millions of years.
Don't lock your faith in a chest and your dad see it.
Right. Yeah. The grace is supposed to flow into you and then through you out to the world, right? You're not given no one's given a coin to go bury in the backyard, right? Because when you show the master, he's just going to smack you down and take the coin and give it to the other guy.
But yeah, the dwarves do, sack the realm. There's basically two falls of Doriath in this chapter. And I feel like the second one, we'll get to this later, but kind of gets smushed right at the end of the chapter. There could have been more of that. But the dwarves escape, and somehow word gets to Beren and Luthien. And we have Beren and Luthien again appear. Yeah. Like it's like they're like our MCU kind of like character cameo for this chapter, which I thought was cool. And ends.
Yeah.
Which they're not called by name. I think they could just call him the Shepherd of the Trees. But if you've read The Lord of the Rings, you're like, oh, Ents. Yeah, so it was neat to see at least Beren in action again. Although, again, in the Lost Tales, they go that duel between him and the dwarf chieftain. There's a long section, a blow-by-blow account of that duel. It's pretty awesome, actually. But yeah, just and any general thoughts on this section? It's really just like dwarves try to get home, Beren kills them and takes the Nauglamir, gives it to Luthien. Where there though, it doesn't seem to do much evil. In fact, they say Luthien is like the fairest of all living beings while she has it.
Yeah, even though she's mortal at this point, I think she still has that Maiar blood.
Oh yeah,
from her mother. So I think that kind of helps counteract even though the Silmarils, were coveted by Valar. I think Melian, of course, and Luthien, they're good. They're unlike Morgoth, so it doesn't affect her in that way, and she's not coveting them or anything like that. So I think it's kind of the final purification of the Silmaril until it goes away.
Yeah, and she represents the only other former elf who has gone to Valinor and came to Middle Earth because granted when she came back she was human.
Oh right, she was a Mandos. Yeah.
But she comes back and is not like Thingol is didn't come back under oath or curse or with the blood of the kinslaying on her hands. So she's got that going for her. And beyond that, she treats the Silmaril as a gift, and the way the chapter reads, she more or less uses it, or the Silmarillion, to benefit the realm, right? Mm-hmm. Their small little realm that they have there. And it's it's an abundant place and a beautiful place, and it's the most the best place to live. Kind of a proto-Lorien, second proto-Lorien kind of a deal.
I just kind of meta here. I wonder if this was like a point in Tolkien's life of like, hey, this is our anniversary. I'm going to give you a special gift, and you are so beautiful. And
right, calling back to the original inspiration of his own love story being kind of the inspiration for Beren and Luthien.
Especially with, it says, and for a little while, the land of the dead that lived became like a vision of the land of the Valar, and no place has it been since so fair, so fruitful, or so filled with light. Like, that could easily be, what he saw after the war.
Yeah.
With just his wife and everything.
Yeah, just domestic bliss, coming home, not having to worry about being blown up or gassed or cut in half by machine gun bullets every minute of your life.
Yeah, like adventure's nice and all, but a good cup of tea at 3:00 on the regular, sweet when you get down to it.
And of course, it's literally right after he goes and beats up a dwarf, like.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of kinslayings, our final act of this compounded tragedy is the second kinslaying of elf on elf. And we're introduced to a lot of characters, including, and didn't we joke many episodes ago that Dior is like, it sounds like an elven cologne. Yeah,
You did.
Dior, fragrance for elves. You know, like, yeah.
You need to trademark that.
Yeah. But yeah, Dior, and again, it's Tolkien, so we have a lot of names. His wife is Nimloth. Interestingly, wasn't that name be reused later? Like, I think the White Tree of Gondor is also named Nimloth.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And then so Nimloth was a kinswoman of Celeborn, and Dior has 3 children, at least to start out with, and that is his sons, Elured and Elurin, and Elwing, as you mentioned, Jeff, his daughter. And it was interesting. Her name means star spray. That's cool. I either I didn't know that before or I forgot. But that's a really awesome thing to have, you know, the meaning of your name. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that he was. I've forgotten that Dior marries an elf. So this is one of the other elf dwarf. No, sorry.
You had to get it in somewhere.
Freudian slip.
Yeah, exactly. I meant to say it's the second elf mortal man relationship. Because of course the first was Beren and Luthien. Although theirs is a little bit different because she was made mortal before they were they married before they married. When
so this confuses me. Does Dior count as human or elf? Because would they not both human. Would they not both be mortal when they conceive him? Now I don't know the timeline.
Yeah,
of
but
this.
I think it's kind of a similar. It's kind of a proto Elrond and Elros kind of a thing.
Yeah,
like, I think they get to kind of choose. You know, there's maybe not choose, but there's a little bit of like, you know, they could be either one. So I don't know. Yeah, that was a little bit unclear.
Yeah,
it's still elf blood. She's just Dior's a half elf,
right?
Well, it's not even a half elf. He's a half human, quarter elf, quarter
Maiar. Yeah,
the Nephilim strain.
Yeah. I'm a third Valar. What? This doesn't make any sense.
And that makes Aragorn like 164th Valar.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the whole that was kind of the whole like long game of like the Valar, right? It was like to ennoble men with this divine strain of mixed elven and Maiar heritage, essentially. Because the Maiar were mostly going to leave and go back to Valinor, and the elves would fade or go to Valinor, and the world would be inherited by men, but it's kind of like this sort of echo of the old world still remains in men themselves. But before that, there's a lot more doom to get through, though.
Yeah. Well, and you have this, so, you know, with this, the death of Thingol and the fleeing of Melian, it's almost a repeat of the death of Beren and of Luthien. Sort of this interplay that occurs with the two of them, you get now with Thingol and Melian. And so this chapter rhymes a lot with a lot of what goes on because, I mean, heck, we have effectively 2 sacks of Menegroth happen in the same chapter.
And the second one is kind of rushed over. That's what I didn't like about the Kinslaying here is that should be a huge event because it's like it's only the second time that elf has gone to war against elf, and it's again on behalf of the Silmarils, and it's just kind of, at least in the audiobook, it's kind of smushed into the last 3 minutes and the chapter, and I'm like, no.
Yeah. There should be more about this. This should be more important. You know, and it's interesting because you're given the idea earlier in the Silmarillion that the dwarves have been fighting each other for a long time. We don't know when, we don't know how, but they had weapons before the elves showed up. Like so they had to be fighting somebody, and maybe it was the orcs, maybe it wasn't. And then men, you kind of get this feeling that, men have always had their wars with each other, but it's supposed to be a very strange thing when it happens that elves full blown go to war with each other. And I think you're right. I think it doesn't get as much kind of enough of a kind of a deep dive into it that we should have gotten. Like the Kinslaying and Alqualande is such a huge event, and this one gets kind of swept under the rug, but it's like it sets in motion the rest of it, right? Like the whole, you get the feeling the whole kind of possible salvation of the Noldor takes a huge hit here, because 3 of the possible savior children, 2 out of the 3, 2 of them end up, disappearing into the woods. Who knows where they are, right?
Yeah.
And now everything rests on Elwing.
And what is it? 3 sons of Feanor are off, if my count is right.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, they're driven by their doom as much as Mithros tries to restrain them and, not have the, like even he's trying to, temper otherwise, hotheads here. But I mean, like, but 2 of them, but Celegorm and Curufin kind of deserved it.
Oh, they had it coming.
Yeah, they had it coming. Right. And then there was that other guy, Caranthier. Yeah.
Caranthier.
He maybe showed up once before, so I don't really remember much about him. But yeah, that thing about Dior's sons being left to starve in the wilderness, I'm like, really? I'm like, that's just, yeah. And it shows to what, like, dark lengths, like of revenge and treachery, like the doom is driving these people. Because that's not a very elvish thing to do.
Right. And not only that, but again, like a couple of paragraphs before that, it talks about it's all because of the Silmaril, that they gazed upon the Silmaril and longed for it with this profane love for an object that should not be what you're longing for. Like, yeah, there is the light of the trees. We wish we had those trees still, but there's more to life than just a jewel, and we need to take this and go do something other than stare at it.
Right. It's almost like perverse nostalgia.
Yeah.
Where the Silmaril represents this world that's gone and they can't have back. So, but they want to keep hanging on to the memory of it so much that it becomes like this overpowering just desire to control that remembering of the world they can't have anymore.
Actually, I actually want to do like a little essay on the sin of nostalgia, because it's almost like sin against hope. Where, like,
right, yeah,
we keep looking so far into the past, wishing that we had what we had. The 1990s were great because I was 9 years old and everything was amazing.
Yeah,
not realizing everything else that was going around, but like that, it was such. The looking back and wishing that we had that stuff, and we don't look towards the future and look towards hope and look towards what could be and what should be when we're going on doing what we should be doing for God.
And it's interesting, right? Because Tolkien himself has been accused of kind of a naive nostalgia, or like, but I think that's a misinterpretation of Tolkien. He's not saying the past is this idealized thing, if only we went back before motor cars, because like famously he abhorred the racket that motor cars made. But it's like, what he's saying is that, like, the past is worth remembering, but you shouldn't try and dwell there.
Because, I mean, that's like our faith. We have to have our roots. There's so many people nowadays they're searching for roots of their faith because they don't have deep roots of faith anymore, and we're trying to find that.
Yeah. And, I think the Silmarils in a lot of ways represent sort of the height of the misplaced love, right? Which is the objects of the world are there. They're good, right? God didn't make anything evil, right? That's one of the many lessons that Genesis chapter 1 hammers home.
Mm-hmm.
The things God made are good, including humans. They're very good. And so they're good. And they should be, it's okay to desire them, but it is not okay to put them before God, right? And that is the trap that most people fall into, right? That's why it's rule
Idolatry.
number 1, right? Yeah. The number 1 on the top 10 most important covenants list. Or the most important laws.
Commandments list. Yeah, it's like as we record this, the daily reading was the golden calf. The most famous example of idolatry in the Bible, where it's like people putting something, and in this case, this
I just put gold into the fire, and
don't get me started on Aaron's weak sauce excuse.
Oh man!
By the way, if I'm Moses, I'm like, was I born yesterday that you try to I just put the gold in and the calf came out. And anyway, it's tangent. But
no, but that's it. Like anything you put in front of God, anything you sacrifice to, time, effort, money, whatever you're sacrificing in front of God, and you're not doing it for a good or in line with what God's will is telling you to do, then that's idolatry. And that is what ultimately the Silmarils represent, are idols, right? They're these, I'm not going to say false versions of Valinor, but they kind of are. That's what they've become, and that's how they're treated.
Right. They're very much like what the One Ring will become later in the Third Age.
Yeah. Well, and two, the Silmarils, I mean, the trees had that narcotic-like effect. They were intoxicating-like effect on the elves, and the Silmarils, are the last remnants of that. So there's also, I'm not saying the elves are addicted to the Silmarils in that way, but that's
don't hold out on me, man. Get my fix.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
sorry,
but no, that's actually that is what happens though, because it talks about how I'm trying to find it here in the book, but that while Luthien was wearing it, everyone was fine. She was so wonderful and everything like that. But the moment that Dior wears it and he becomes the fairest of the children of the world, of the threefold race, the Edain, of the Eldar, and the Maiar, he's this big shot now, and people are like, oh heck no. We're going to go do something about this. That's a problem.
Wasn't there that recent Star Trek episode where the crew of the Enterprise gets addicted to light or something like that? I think it was Strange New Worlds.
Addicted to light.
Where they become like moths and they become obsessed with light or something like that.
I mean, that strikes me as a Lower Decks kind of a thing.
Oh, okay.
It probably is a Strange New Worlds.
There's been, I've watched that show and I can't think of one where they're addicted to light, but
I just remember the one guy smashing his head into a light fixture because he really needed his fix of some random red shirt.
That one was
random red
there were aliens infecting them or something that were needing light or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But,
yeah.
It was some it was alien
parasites.
It's always alien parasites.
It's always alien. So
that's a t-shirt.
It's always demon alien parasites.
But anyway, the fact that we're going off the rails about Star Trek is probably a sign that we have reached near the end of this episode. But before we wrap up, though, I just want to go around and see if you guys have any sort of wrap-up thoughts on the doom-filled Doom, now with more Doom, chapter of the Ruin of Doriath. What about it, Jeff?
Yeah, nothing else here. Like I said, this really is, because we didn't really touch on, but Elwing, the last thing is she gets away with the Silmaril, so I mean that's going to be very important in the next, the next couple chapters, because I think we have 2 more actual chapters, and then we'll have reached the end of the Quinta at least. Then we have the Akalabeth, which has plenty of doom, plenty of extra doom to go around. So
and human sacrifice.
Doom for all, doom for you, and doom for you.
Nothing else here.
How about it, Pat? Any final thoughts?
No, it's. I do find it impressive that somehow Tolkien managed to make, or Christopher / Tolkien managed to make a chapter that was even sadder than Turin's. It's just sort of like, because so many people meet their ends in this chapter in ignoble or terrible ways, including the Tuor's parents. And it is the full-blown tragedy, and it foreshadows how the end of the House of Finwë is going to be. Like, this doesn't end well for anybody. Sorry. I said it at the beginning when you left. I don't know why you didn't realize it was going to turn out badly.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Rob?
No, for me, it's just, again, as I started, just the idea of how depressing this is. But like, really, the meta of it, of how our own pride and our own desires can taint us and stain our eyes of what we're looking at, and how we talk about seeing with rose-colored glasses all the time, and we need to take those off and see the beauty of the world. And this could have been so much different if they would have not looked at the Silmaril as just this object of needing to have, and really been able to enjoy it for what it was. And we need to do that with what we have now.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so that's it for this depressing episode of The Secrets of Middle-earth. But before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank all our patrons who make our show possible, including Renee S., Centex S., James C., Peter T., and Ann H. Their generous donations help us to continue to create The Secrets of Middle-earth and all of the shows here at StarQuest, and you can join them at sqpn.com/give. And of course, we love to hear from our listeners. What did you think about the Ruin of Doriath, or any part of the Silmarillion? You can let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter. You can send an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, or leave us a comment on YouTube or on Spotify, or by visiting our channel on the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Join us next time for something special and long promised to celebrate Hobbit Day. It may involve a certain forbidden romance between 2 races. We'll see. Until then, thank you, Rob Leonardi, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle-earth.
Thank you for having me, Thomas.
And Pat Mason, thank you as well.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
And Jeff Haecker, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Thomas.
And I'm your host, Thomas Salerno. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy, The Secrets of Star Trek. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/Star Trek.